And this is our Best of Belize live event slash webinar. And our agenda today is, once we say hello and welcome, we'll talk about Belize as a country and its culture, the AGC itinerary, what activities we get to do on this trip, what our accommodations are like, what the food is like, and then please save your questions for the very end. You can enter them into the chat bar as soon as you think of them, and that'll be the parking lot for those queries, and we'll get to them all in the last couple minutes. And then stick around after the Q&A for prizes. Okay, I'll let our host take it away from here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lainey Reisman. I'm here in Washington, D.C. I had the real pleasure of guiding the first outing of this trip earlier this year. I've been sort of guiding on and off with AGC for, 20 years, not to date myself. I actually knew and had been to Belize multiple times before guiding the trip. I've lived in Guatemala and Mexico. I've spent a lot of time overseas, and I'll share some more observations about that. But looking forward to sharing some information about the trip with all of you. And it's like summary version. It's beautiful. It's fantastic. And it's so wonderful that we're able to offer this trip in the middle of the winter in the US and get some fun in the sun. But I will now pass it over to my co-host, co-guide, and partner in crime, Caitlin.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Caitlin Shinney, and I've been a guide for AGC since 2017. I was fortunate to guide this trip in February of this past winter. It was an amazing time, and we're really glad to have this opportunity for you to learn more about this fantastic country, an amazing itinerary, and something that you'll definitely appreciate if you're able to participate with us next year.
Cool. Okay. I'm just going to start and give a little bit of an overview about the country. As you can see, Belize is that little slice of yellow in Central America. It's nestled in between Mexico and Guatemala. There is a sort of ongoing border dispute between Belize and Guatemala because, as you can see, it's sort of the entire coastline of that piece of territory. Belize is a super unique country in the region because it was an ex-British Commonwealth. So it really has a more of a Caribbean feel to it in terms of the culture, even though it's solidly based in Central America and surrounded by Spanish-speaking countries. As you can see on the right, if you look at the map of Belize, what you're going to see there is sort of sticking out in that point is Belize City, which is where our trip begins. If you follow that inland, we go to the Belize Zoo, which is also marked on that map, and then down back out to the coast in Danriga. And then on the right side is the Belize Barrier Reef. So all of those little red flags with white slashes, those are dive sites on the reef. Also, many of them are snorkeling sites. And the Belize Barrier Reef is actually the second largest reef system in the world after the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. And it's the largest in the entire Atlantic and the Caribbean region. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And it's a really unique place at the moment as well, because the reef is still, notwithstanding the fact of rising seawater temperatures, the reef is still largely in very good shape, and there's not as much coral bleaching and things of the nature that you might have heard about in the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. So there's over 180 miles of coastline there. There's over 400 different islands, both inhabited and uninhabited, throughout the region. So Belize, we're going to do a little like quiz here. So Belize is very much a new country. And so the question I'm going to ask you guys, and I'll give you the answer, is do you think you are older or younger than the country of Belize? So you could just put your answer in the chat if you want. So are you older or younger than the country of Belize? Julie thinks she's older. Lisa's older. Anyone else? Emily thinks she's younger. Okay. Well, I'm not going to ask everyone their age, just to let you know. But I'll just say that Belize gained independence in 1981, so it's only 43 years old as a country. It was known as British Honduras until 1973. So again, it was part of the Commonwealth. And actually, the Belizean currency had the queen on it for many years because it was part of the Commonwealth. A sort of side note on that while Belize does have its own currency, pretty much the dollar, the US dollar, is in use throughout the country. So you do not have to worry about changing currency or getting Belizean currency because the dollar is widely accepted, and actually the Belize dollar is sort of pegged to the US dollar. So that makes it a unique and pretty easy to travel there. So, it's really thought of more of like got more of a Caribbean feel, and it will, if you will, than a Central America feel. The primary language, or the official language in Belize, is English, although the population is very ethnically mixed and ethnically diverse. And almost everyone in Belize is of multiracial descent. So about 45% is sort of mixed Mayan and European descent. And that's referred to in Belize as the mestizo culture, so mixed culture. 30% are of African descent and come from slaves that were within the region. And that's got a kind of Creole feel to it, and they speak Creole amongst themselves. And so that's very much, if you've kind of been maybe to Jamaica or you've seen that culture, it's got that kind of culture. And about 10% are strictly of Mayan or indigenous descent throughout the region. So while English is the official language, over half the population also speaks Spanish. That number is increasing because Belize, given that it was British, part of the British Commonwealth for so long, is actually a relatively wealthy country compared to some of the other countries like Guatemala or Honduras in the region. And so there has been a lot of migration from those Spanish-speaking countries into Belize, given particularly tourism opportunities. So you will often hear people in Belize speaking Spanish, they'll speak English, they'll speak Creole. And you may or may not also have interactions with some guides who speak one of the many indigenous Mayan languages. On our trip, one of the local guides spoke Quechua Maya and had some really interesting observations on his lifestyle. But it just sort of depends on who we're working with. So that is a little bit about Belize. People sometimes ask, like, where does the name Belize come from? So it's believed to be from a Mayan word that means muddy waters. So the rivers that run through Belize into the interior of Central America and into, say, Guatemala, which has some of the primary Mayan ruins. So those waterways from the coast into the Mayan communities were key for transportation of goods and peoples. So the river systems and the mangrove and wetland systems that are in Belize were really critical to its role in its development. So they think that the name Belize came from the Mayan word for muddy waters, Belize. So X in Mayan is actually a sh sound. So that would be, instead of that being Belize, as you see there, it would be pronounced Belize. It's got about 400,000 people. Interesting side note, there's about 30 to 40,000 American expatriates who live in Belize. And there's also quite a few British expatriates who live in Belize. The capital was Belize City. That is where our trip starts and ends and where you're going to fly into. Belize City was very damaged by hurricanes because it is right on the coast. And so they created a sort of a new city, if you will, an artificial capital called Belmopan, which is inland. You can think of it as, in the United States, we sort of created Washington, D.C. as our capital. Some of you, if you're familiar with Brazil, also created a capital, which was sort of away from some of the other population bases. So the capital is Belmopan, and that is where the government is headquarters. Although the kind of historical, cultural center, if you will, of Belize is Belize City. So that's a little bit of a background on Belize. Happy to answer any questions you might have, but in interest of time, we'll pass on to talk through what our itinerary is on this trip.
So everyone will arrive. Last year, we had several people arrive ahead of time and do their own excursion. When you do arrive, we'll be meeting at the Best Western Hotel, a short distance from the airport. And if anyone does arrive the night prior, we have a great opportunity where you can go caving and tubing and take an amazing walk through the rainforest. After we do our welcome introductions, get to know our local guide, we'll then drive about an hour to the zoo, and we'll have gorgeous accommodations we'll talk about later, and we'll have dinner and then a private nighttime tour of the zoo. We will then drive to about 45 minutes again to where we'll start off in the motorboat, and we will begin our ocean part of our trip at Tobacco Cay, and we'll start with a kayaking lesson. On day 3, we'll do more kayaking, snorkeling, maybe some paddleboarding. Day 4, additional kayaking, and this day is a particularly special day because we can sail to the Saltwater Cay, and there may be an opportunity to visit the Smithsonian Institute there. That is on a separate island, so it'll be weather dependent. On day 5, additional kayaking, snorkeling, and relaxation, maybe some yoga. Day 6, we will then kayak to a separate island, Billy Hawk Cay, and that is where we'll have lunch. It is gorgeous, and then at that point, we will take the boat back to Saltwater Cay and then get back to the mainland and start a whole second aspect of this amazing itinerary. So it's a great amount of ocean, and then we'll head inland. And at this point is when we go to the Crooked Tree Wildlife Sanctuary. And if you are not a big birder, that is perfect. And if you are a birder, this is the place for you. The migration route is right there, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then during this inland part, we have a fabulous opportunity to go to the Mayan ruins. That is also via boat and additional birding en route to the ruins. And then we will be on our property, the Crooked Tree Lagoon, which is fantastic. Plenty of walking trails, and our cultural demonstrations will occur. And then sadly, it brings us to day 10.
So I will jump in here very quickly to tease Caitlin, who is a very close friend of mine, a bit, but also to clarify that the pronunciation of the islands is typically key. So like K-E-Y. So even though it's written K-A-Y-E, in the UK and also in Belize, you would pronounce it Tobacco Key, Saltwater Key, etc. So just to let people know, so that if you join us for this trip, which hopefully you will, when you get there, you'll be in the know of the pronunciation. Sorry, Caitlin, had to call you out.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you. And what is Belize known for? Lainey just gave us a great, rich history. And one of the other wonderful things about this little country is its low human population, which makes its natural paradise. It has a rich and variety of wildlife. And as she shared, it's the second largest barrier reef in the world. And we have over 500 species of fish. We have over 125 species of mammals, including the jaguars, so many manatees. We saw dolphins from afar. The birding is amazing with over 600, including residential and migratory species. The reptiles, amphibians. Honestly, the fish and the coral were amazing for both of our trips. There are over 70 species of hard coral, 36 species of soft coral, and you will not believe the amount of conch shells. I know that we have some pictures in our slides and you'll see on the website, but I could not get over how conch shells are everywhere and they're just flourishing there. You'll start to see and be able to self-identify many of the different species. It is honestly just a really special paradise that we're looking forward to inviting you out to.
Yeah, I think that as what's really interesting about this trip is that you really get this naturalist blend of sea life that Caitlin just talked about, the corals, the fish, and other sort of marine mammals. You've got some of the most amazing birding within the region. Now, I am not a birder, but I got really into it on this trip. I definitely recommend people bring binoculars if they have them. The last stop of our itinerary is the Crooked Tree a preserve. It's known as one of the best birding sites in all of Central America. It's over 44,000 acres with these huge wetlands, so you get to see wetland birds and also seabirds. So you're getting and lots of different tropical birds. We will have bird guides with us that can help identify both in terms of looking at the birds and their calls. We also spend some time going over some of the birding apps for those people who, want to maybe learn a little bit more about the main birding app, which is Merlin, which is really cool because you can record the sounds and it will identify what bird you're listening to. You could also take a picture and it can identify what bird you're looking at. And so our birding guides actually use that as well. To help us see different species of birds that range from, giant vultures and pelicans to, very unique tropical small songbirds. So really quite a lot of diversity. And again, at the Crooked Tree Wildlife Sanctuary, which is this birding paradise. Now, we use that as a base, as you'll see, as we discuss later, to actually access some of the Mayan ruins by water. So, but it's a really nice opportunity to sort of just test your feet a little bit, get your feet a little wet around birding and get excited about it. I know I found it really interesting, and because the guides know so much, you really get quite enthusiastic about it, even if you think, I'm not really interested in birds. So yeah, that's a little bit about the birding. Yeah, you can see here we've got pelicans, there's egrets, there's kingfishers, all sorts of different birds life there. And then you can also see some of the amphibians and mammals. There are a lot of insects around. None in our rooms, luckily. But there's leafcutter ants, and there is a wide, like any tropical area, a wide variety of insects. Some people ask about like biting insects, mosquitoes, sandflies. Wasn't really an issue either on the islands or in the mainlands, with the exception maybe sometimes if it's been wet in the Mayan ruins, because they are in the juggles. So we do recommend insect repellent. But particularly this time of the year that we were there, we didn't really have any major issues with insect bites. I don't know, Caitlin, whether that was something that your group had the same experience, because you're about a month later.
I think the packing list, and when you follow it, we recommend long sleeve shirts and pants. I think that makes a large difference to have your skin covered and protected. or you could feel free and bring some bug spray. But we dressed covered, which we didn't have any issues. And about the so many different species that we see, the zoo tour is a wonderful opportunity. And then while we're out on the birding, sometimes we'll go first thing in the morning, just after coffee, around 6:30 in the morning, and then another one at dusk. And during that time, we come across a lot of different species, including the cotamundi, which is a member of the raccoon family. And in the middle picture, you have that cute little puppy. On the islands, they do have like an island family dog that is taken care of. They go to the vet, and the puppies were adorable this past winter. One of them did happen to smuggle away someone's water shoe that they left at their side door. It did not get eaten or anything, but it was just funny coming out in the morning. It was moved about 10 or 12 feet away. This is just really a wonderful opportunity to see so many different species, be outdoors. As Lainey mentioned, the weather is ideal. We're looking about a high of 80 during our winter months there, and it was just a fabulous time.
Yeah, and I would just add on, I'm not sure, while they refer to it as a zoo, it really seems and is more of a wildlife sanctuary. So there's different rescued animals. There's very unique animals. There's different felines on site. There's a jaguar and other sorts of animals there. But what we do is just our group is kind of walking through at night with a guide. It's small. It's the animals are, it's nicely designed. So if you're thinking, I live in Washington, D.C., so I'm like zoo, I'm thinking of the National Zoo, this, huge structure where things are really far away and lots of people. This is more like an animal reserve where you're learning about the local species. They're protected. And many of the animals that arrived at the zoo are actually rescued due to some whatever sort of nature. So it's got a very nice feel to it, as opposed to a sort of more commercial operation, if you will. And then in addition to all the wildlife we talked about, there's just amazing flora as well. There's tons of different types of tropical plants and different orchids. There's several hundred orchids actually that are endemic to Belize. Over 4,000 different flowering plants, 700 trees. So you've got just this explosion of vibrancy and color and beauty. We also go over the use of another app, which some people like to use, called Plant Snap, which you can take a picture of any leaf or any tree or any bark or any color, and it can help you identify what that plant is. So while using these naturalist apps by no means is required, if you're interested in learning how to use them, we do like to go over that, which is something pretty cool for some people if they want to use that resource moving forward. The black orchid is the national flower of Belize. It may or may not be in bloom while we're there. On one of the Mayan ruins we'll visit, they actually have a black orchid. They're very rare and very a beautiful sort of orchid. And hopefully we'll be able to see it in bloom. So, so that again is just we're talking a little bit about all the different wildlife and natural wonders within Belize and the history. So now, going a little bit towards, okay, well, what are we actually going to do there? Which is a little bit going over the itinerary. So I think probably the number one activity that we do and that people love is snorkeling. And we will go over, if you've never snorkeled before, we are very used to working with new participants and going over different snorkeling techniques and working with you so that you're very comfortable in the water. I had one woman who had never snorkeled before, and after the first snorkel was kind of out there and doing everything and really loving it all on her own. We snorkel. There are flotation devices always available. So if anyone's not comfortable with that, then that is always the case, that you could snorkel holding on to a tube or flotation device. It's usually in relatively shallow water because we're snorkeling to see the marine life and the coral life underneath us. So we're not going to be in deep water. And as you can see, because the barrier reef almost acts as kind of a protection from the ocean, the water is typically very smooth and very calm. There's not a lot of waves. And so, yes, we will be doing all sorts of snorkeling while we're on the ocean part of our trip. We will be snorkeling in the sea on coral reefs that Belize is known for. We will also offer a really cool snorkel around a mangrove island where you see completely different sort of marine life, because it's different fish and different species that actually live within the trees and the roots of the mangroves. And so one special thing that you'll be able to see there is our seahorses that live within those mangroves, and there's just very different, interesting, colorful algae. We have multiple opportunities to try night snorkeling, which is super cool, and I highly would recommend everyone try it. We have big flashlights. We go as a group. It's very safe. There's nothing that's dangerous, if you will, in the ocean. But what we can do is see a completely different species and behaviors at night. So one of the coolest things that our group saw was multiple octopus, because you could see octopi. You really only see them out at night because they are nocturnal typically. And we were able to really spend quite a bit of time with them and watching them as they move, and they're kind of using their tentacles and changing their colors to camouflage with the surroundings. And I think that was a highlight and a really special experience for our groups. Were those night snorkels. We typically offer 2 leaving from the shore, so we don't get in the boat. We just walk from the shore into the water. And then there's also, just to mention, an opportunity if people are interested, we can arrange an introduction to scuba diving. There's a few scuba diving resorts that are nearby. In my group, when we did it, we had, I think, 4 women who wanted to try it. So we set up what's called a kind of intro to scuba diving course for them. It's just a few hours, and they got a chance to learn how to use the equipment and dive down and very shallow, and they loved it. So that is that would be an add-on activity that we would arrange. It would have an additional cost. I think it's like roughly $100, but that is an option as well for another different type of opportunity within the water and to see the marine life. So yes, you can see in, oh wait, I think I didn't talk through this picture, but one of the things I also wanted, Caitlin talked a little bit about all the amazing conch you'll see, and we talked about the different fish life. There's also lots of really cool rays. So there's stingrays, and there's the bottom right picture there that you could see is a spotted eagle ray, which are really magical, beautiful creatures. They are not dangerous to humans, but you can often see rays throughout the region, and they're very beautiful. So yes, sorry, I will now pass back over to Caitlin to talk about some of the other activities.
So as you can see, we have several boat pictures and happy faces in the top left. We use the boats as transportation, and when you are following the packing list, we do ask you to pack what we request, because your luggage goes into a hatch at the front of and the bow of the boat. But as you can see, we are exposed, so we recommend wearing a light raincoat depending on the breeze, and we do get misted occasionally. Secured hat, sunblock. The boating is great, but in case you need any Dramamine or pressure point bracelets, we 100% recommend you bringing it. And even if you don't have a problem, we probably would err on the side of caution, is just bring it. And if you need it, we recommend you take it about 30 minutes before we go on the boat. And again, the boating could typically take about 45 minutes when we head out to the Keys, but that depends on the wind. And a lot of this trip, is kind of, we joke it's every 15 minutes for an update, because if the wind's blowing a particular way or changes, we might not offer paddle boarding at that time or kayaking, or we might change the location of the snorkel because we want to make sure the wind's blowing generally into the island for another safety reason. And then when we're also kayaking, it's sometimes easier if you're not kayaking against the wind. So a lot of that plays into it. And on the boat, that's why we recommend it could be about 45 minutes. But if it is choppy, we might go out and about and come back in. So it could be a little bit longer. We had wonderful weather while we were on the boat. As you can see, we're all wearing life jackets. And it was fun. We had a little sing off on one of the boat events. And here we are kayaking. The kayaks are two-person kayaks. And if you have not kayaked or you haven't done it in quite a bit of time, don't worry, because we have an extensive refreshing of skills and learn how to for the first time. The safety instructions done on land so everyone can hear and see. And then after we go through a fair amount of safety and understanding, we then go out into the shallow water so you can practice getting in, feel, just make sure the seat is right. You have little rest spots for your legs. So we want to make sure those are all lined up to your appropriate height. And it just is relaxing and we don't rush. I know when you see that crystal clear blue water, you're going to be like, let's just go. But we do take our time and just review everything. Since the kayaks are doubles, we'll have 3 guides, one for AGC and 2 local guides. So we can split up and pair with you if you would like. And on this picture is one of the fantastic days where we go sail kayaking, which is not necessarily a typical experience for a lot of our trips, but this is one of the highlights of the week. And you can see we have a sail and a little mast goes in. And hopefully, if the wind is blowing correctly, we'll have a nice, easy coast to the next island, which was lucky for us. It was a gorgeous day. And it was a little bit too windy, so we actually paired up. So we used one sail and had 2 kayaks. So everyone put their hand on the other kayak, and 4 of us were gently but exhilaratingly pulled across the way. It was really one of the highlights of the week. So it was fortunate. But again, that's weather dependent. We just try to mix in the activities when it works for Mother Nature. So on this trip, we do just say, we'll let you know as we go with it. And again, we're on island time. So if the wind changes, the activity may change.
Yeah, so another really fun thing, if you haven't tried it, there's multiple opportunities to try is stand-up paddleboarding or supping. And again, we do that in shallow water, and there's a variety of different options in terms of how to enjoy your stand-up paddleboarding. You can literally sit on the paddleboard with your legs out in front of you or your legs crossed, and that is, a very stable way just to kind of paddle around. You can see in these pictures, there's a couple people on their knees, which is, maybe kind of like the next level up. You can paddle a little bit easier. Unlike kayaking, you have this kind of one paddle that you would switch from side to side in order to help you steer. And again, we will give you instructions about how to maneuver on the stand-up paddleboard. And then if you feel comfortable, you can get up on your feet and try it that way. And the water's warm and refreshing. So if you lose your balance and fall in, as I did, that's fine too. You sort of get back up and try again. And we always have people out there and guides. One of the highlights for our group is that we did do some stand-up paddleboarding at sunset. So we were able to kind of really get out into the middle of the water and watch the sunset. And it was really special, and the birds flying overhead. And I think, people really enjoyed that opportunity. So if you haven't tried stand-up paddleboarding, again, there's a lot of options. There's even like stand-up paddle sup yoga, which you can try. If you really want to be advanced, that's an opportunity. But it's a great, really chill, relaxing way to be out on the water. Most people don't fall. Most people just are on their paddleboard and have fun. But again, if you were to lose your balance, you're just going to go into some nice warm water anyways. So that's, and it's a great sort of all over body workout. If you are standing in particular, you're basically using your core in order to keep your balance. You're using your arms to paddle. And so it's also a really excellent opportunity to kind of get your heart rate up if you want to. So supping is another opportunity that you'll have. And then I will pass along to Caitlin to talk about fishing, which, just to say, is optional. Some people were, it was definitely a highlight for some people on our trip, but other people were like, wait a minute, I'm snorkeling and looking at these beautiful fish, and I don't really want to go and fish them. So fishing is entirely an optional activity. And if it's something you don't want to see or be involved in, you do not have to. But Caitlin, I will pass it off to you to discuss a little bit more.
And as Lainey mentioned, we'll be appreciating and loving the snorkeling with the blue angelfish, the triggerfish, even barracuda. But when we do the fishing, it is generally for small snappers, and they are a firm white meat that has a sweeter flavor. And the great thing is we're not fishing with a traditional fishing pole. We're doing hand fishing with a hook and line, which also is a great sustainable option. And on our trip, it was pretty crazy. We were catching, I don't know, at least 80 snappers. And we were about 12 to 20 feet out in the water, still crystal clear blue water. And then you just would get into a rhythm and lower the hook, and hopefully within 2 or 3 minutes you'd want, at least one of us would be pulling up something. And that night we're fortunate with our lodging. They were able to prepare all the fish, and then we ate family style with the employees. Everyone that helped prepare the meal helped us fishing, helped clean off the fish, and we had a really nice cultural night as well. And we can talk about that part later, but we did some drums, and it just was a lovely evening. Generally, we don't eat fish every night while we're in Belize, which may catch some of you by surprise, especially where we're ocean based. But a lot of the meals are chicken type. But this night was fantastic. And if you have never tried fishing, you haven't done it in a while, the hand line, you just have a loose hand, lower the hook, and cross your fingers.
Yeah, and like Caitlin said, pretty much it's foolproof. Everyone was able to hook a fish or many fish. And we go to an area which is got a rich, abundant fish life, and so it's sort of fun. I don't know, I'm not a big fisher person, and I'm known to get so excited when I feel a tug on my hook that I somehow lose the fish. But so this was great because, you know, you actually kind of like can't not manage to at least, you know, hook one or two on there, which is exciting. So I've got great videos of you know, lots of excitement, enthusiasm, and squeals as people were pulling up the fish. Now, depending on your guide, many of us are either yoga instructors or yoga aficionados. And so we will offer the opportunity to do some, you know, mainly standing yoga, but with some basic poses that we will do in the morning. Again, only for people who want to participate, want to do some stretching. I like to offer it because it's a great way to start the day. And, you know, it's not going to be an hour long, and we're not going to do crazy twists and moves and things like that. We really kind of cater it just so it's a relaxing, kind of nice way to start the day, that all different levels of flexibility can participate in. So typically your AGC guide will offer some form of yoga or stretching based on you know, their and your interests and availability. We would do it outside, and either on the sand or on different platforms that are out overlooking the water. So it's really stunning. I see someone waving. Maureen, are you waving to us? Do you want to come off mute for a second if you're waving to us? Maybe Maureen's waving to someone else, but we can keep going. Maureen, if you hear me, you can't hear. Okay.
She'll give us a ring after the webinar.
Okay.
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 Relaxation. This is a great slide. On the top right-hand corner, if you can see the participant in the hammock, that we rent out this resort. Everyone has gorgeous, colorful bungalows, and you have the front door. And as you walk through your unit, on the backside is the deck and hammock. Everyone was loving it. The views are beautiful. The breeze is stunning, gorgeous. And this trip, even though it sounds like we have a lot of activities we just explained, there's plenty of downtime. And the great thing is, this is your vacation. If you don't want to come snorkeling or you don't want to try something, you can hang back, bring a book, do some watercolors, journal, whatever you would like. There's plenty of time for relaxing, even though we have all these great options.
So really one of the coolest things about Belize, and it's not just Belize because it runs into Guatemala and Mexico and Honduras as well, but this was part of the Mayan civilization, which goes back to about 1500 BC. And sort of in one of these, we're not entirely sure what happened to some of these towns and cities. Around 900 AD, the Mayan civilization disperses. That being said, as I mentioned, there are many people in Belize and Guatemala, Mexico, Honduras for that matter as well, that are descendants of the indigenous Mayan people. So the Mayan civilization was a very rich civilization. At its height, there was over 40 cities. Each city kind of had a population between like 5,000 and 50,000. There are ruins scattered throughout all of Central America. And a lot of those ruins follow a typical pattern of having pyramids where the religious leaders would basically that would be their temples and their sacred sites that would be surrounded by different sort of structures to house the upper residents of the cities. And that's mainly what you'll see. The ruins, some of them are completely intact and you can almost go into, some of them are just walls. We will, on this trip, visit two different sites of Mayan ruins. The first one is Altunja, which is in the jungle. There's a lot of wildlife around. It was a major ceremonial and trade center. And found on that site is a very famous artifact. It was a carved jade head. The actual jade head is not there, but a replica is. And it's the largest Mayan jade artifact that was ever unearthed. And it's a very beautiful piece. There's also very sophisticated reservoir systems that are there in Altunja. We'll be there for a couple of hours. It's relatively flat, and we will walk around and hear about both the history of the Maya and that site in particular. And then we will also visit probably the most famous Mayan site in Belize, which is the Lamanai ruins. This is a really cool place to visit because we actually arrive via boat. So part of the reason, as I mentioned earlier, we stay at that birding wildlife sanctuary, the Crooked Tree Resort, is because it's very close to the river that we will take a boat ride, and that is a wildlife viewing ride. We'll hopefully see, you know, crocodiles and birds and monkeys as we're on the boat. And then we arrive to Lamanai, which is situated right on the river. And it's a beautiful site. It's one of the oldest ruins. It dates back right to the beginning of the Mayan culture. That one, we will do quite a bit of walking around. We'll be there again for a couple hours. There are opportunities if you want to hike up, or not hike, but to walk up to some of the viewing platforms. Some of it is on, you can see there, you know, steps going up. Some of them are on paths going up. If you are not 100% comfortable with heights, or perhaps you might want a walking stick or a pole. It's not really exposed, but it is a little more up and down. Some people just chose to hang out in the courtyards and relax. Some people did want to walk up to some of those viewing platforms. So Lamanai actually means in Maya submerged crocodile. So situation right on the river. But learning about the Mayan history, seeing these two sites is a real incredible opportunity to understand the history and the culture, not just of Belize, but of the region in general. We're fairly close. Some of you might have heard of Tikal, which is the biggest Mayan city. It's located in Guatemala. We'll be fairly close to that when we're in Lamanai.
Thank you, Lainey, because I do feel sometimes the ocean activities and the birding can kind of take the forefront when people look at this itinerary. But honestly, your explanation of this, and it is so lucky. And when you look at our pictures, you'll note that there's not a ton of tourists there. One, it's remote, it's rather difficult to get to. Plus, you have to pre-secure a charter boat to get out to the ruins. And it is really special. I think maybe we saw 20 people one day and not much more than that and the second day. And I believe AGC does an excellent job really focusing on cultural activities that are rich and varied. And one of the other events we do while we're at the bird sanctuary is we have on site a cultural couple hours, about maybe just shy of 2 hours. And we go over, as you can see, excuse me, in the right hand, they're doing rice husking. And we have drumming in the center, and then below that, a lot of singing and dancing. And on the left side, it looks like a purple that you can see in that picture. It's optional if you'd like to bring a shirt, some socks, anything you'd like. We go over dyeing and how we use the bark. And we'll soak, as you can see, it's a jug. We'll put different pieces of bark in the containers, and some will last longer than other in case you want a deeper, more purple color. All fantastic, all relaxed, all outside in the shade. And I don't know if you've ever appreciated eating a cashew before, but after this cultural experience, you will appreciate how much work it takes to get a cashew out. It is fascinating, and it's a really nice, even paced morning. So I think that is one of the highlights that people go into this trip not realizing how much they're going to love the drums and the dancing. But it's a great opportunity sprinkled throughout the trip.
And we also visit the Crooked Tree. There's a sort of local community museum that talks about the history of the community. And it's fascinating because, again, it's this crazy blend of descendants of African slaves and indigenous peoples. And you really learn about this very rich cultural history that, dates back to the Maya and carries through to, British colonialism. So I think that is, for us, was a really interesting visit as well that we include in that trip. There's also just a lot of sugar cane around. We learn about sugar cane and how it's processed and used in coffee and things like that. So, there is some walking on this trip. There's not like major hiking. Some of you might have been on some other trips of ours that are more hiking oriented. We do walk around the ruins. We're walking around the bird sanctuary. We're walking around the zoo. But so you are going to need some good sturdy walking shoes. Again, if you wanted to bring poles, that's optional. We would not recommend doing these walking things in flip-flops or sandals. For one, because it can be wet depending on the weather and slippery. And number two, there are insects and ants and things. So you don't want to accidentally walk through that line of, leafcutter ants or different types of ants with your flip-flops or your sandals. But it's, never more than an hour or two at a time. And we are always really good about making sure we have hydration. So it's not a hiking trip per se, although there are opportunities to, walk at different points throughout the trip. Yeah.
And there are some inter-island flights, domestic flights that we can discuss. First, I sort of mentioned already, to get to the Tropical Education Center is a 40-minute 15-passenger van shuttle, and then about a 60-minute drive down to get to the port. And then there's a great quick flight that you can easily videotape out the window. It's about a 20-person plane. and you go over the islands and you just see the crystal clear blue water. That was one of our highlights that we didn't anticipate. We go into a very small one gate terminal, and it's basically a few minutes from where the motorboat drop off was. So you could almost walk it, but it's about 10 to 15, no more than 20-minute ride. And you just check in, drop your luggage, they load it, and you have these small puddle hopper type planes pulling in and out. And off we went, and it was a great 20 minutes. And then from there, when we get to the Bird's Eye Lodge back to Belize City Airport, that is about a 60-minute, 50-person passenger van ride. So the transportation time is not too long. I know a lot of our trips vary, but this one, I feel like it's great management. You're not stuck in a van all day long or starting the day with a long, windy road. The Belize roads were great. And the plane ride was really a great highlight.
I know we're maybe a little bit over time, but we wanted to show you guys some pictures of the accommodations. It's very comfortable. There's fans, but for the most part, the accommodation is somewhat rustic. As you can see, we're in two-person cabins at the Tropical Education Center, which is basically linked to the zoo. There are fans in the rooms. When we go to Tobacco Key, basically there's these gorgeous little villas or bungalows that are actually over the water. You can see that there's hammocks there. They're small, and they're not much more than a couple beds and fans and a bathroom in the room. But just having that breathtaking view literally outside your door is amazing. There's not air conditioning, but there's lots of nice cool breezes. So I don't think that has been an issue for anyone. So sorry, I just went by Tobacco Key, Julie, if you want to advance the slide. Yeah, those are the cute, adorable, beautiful bungalows that are right over the water. It's actually quite funny as people are kayaking by, other people are sometimes sitting in their hammocks and waving. So it's really a lovely place. Our third accommodation is in Saltwater Key. I would say that's the nicest of our accommodation options. They're again bungalows that but are newly constructed. They back up onto the water, onto the mangroves. So you have a back balcony, as you can see there with the hammocks that is looking over some water. Really beautiful, magical spots there as well. That's on the other island, Saltwater Key. And then our final accommodation is at the Crooked Tree Lodge. That's more of a traditional lodge with, it's a two-story structure. We typically stay in rooms on the second floor. And so we have, if you see on the top left, that big kind of balcony where we can meet and look at birds and things of that nature. The Crooked Tree Lodge does have air conditioning because it can get warmer. Not everyone used it. Some people do. It's an option, and it's there based on personal desires. So lovely accommodations in all places. The place we stay the first night before we start is a kind of more of a traditional hotel in the town. And we have different options for people to go out to dinner in Belize City as well. If that's the sort of night before the trip starts for those people who are arriving the day before.
And a lot of our meals are family style. So it's just something to know going into it as far as dietary restrictions and allergies. The family style was fantastic. You can help yourself to as much as you like. There are many different options, but I just want to highlight the seafood is not an every night occurrence. They're healthy salads. They also have some alcohol and non-alcohol beverages if you like throughout the week. At Southwater, they have a bar lounge over the ocean, and that one has probably the most options throughout the week. When we're back at the Crooked. That one we have a bartender. There was a man last time. He'll take an account at Bird's Eye Lodge, and then you'll just pay it upon checkout. And then we recommend bringing some small bills if you do want to have that. At the Bird's Eye Lodge, they had fantastic coconut drinks, and I think it was just like fresh limes, whatever it was. Every night there was just some sort of specialty drink that everyone really seemed to enjoy. And the table sizes, as you can see, they are just, it's fun. You switch seats, you meet someone else new throughout the trip, and we have great conversations. At the outside picnic one in the center lower photo, that I believe is Billy Hawk's photo, they also have milkshakes. If you wanted to bring a few dollars, the milkshake was great. I did the chocolate peanut butter banana one, and it was fantastic. So there's a lot of different options throughout the week, but if you have any particular dietary restrictions, feel free and connect with the office in the meantime.
Great. So for those of you who are flying in the day beforehand, which is, I think, a great idea, we guides fly in the day beforehand just in case there's any sort of travel plan or travel snafu. We obviously need to make sure we're there before you do. But we have arranged an optional activity. So if you were to fly in the day before, we actually don't start the trip until that afternoon. But what we found is this really amazing tubing trip. It's a half-day trip, and your AGC guide can help you arrange it if you do arrive beforehand. For actually some people, it was the highlight. You basically are in these tubes, and you're going down through caves, and it's really quite a magical experience. It's very affordable. It's a half-day activity. So we just wanted to put that out there. And again, it's something that when the trip starts getting organized, we'll be asking about whether people want to partake in that. It's an additional add-on optional activity. Some people who arrived the day before just wanted to hang out at the pool at the hotel, which was also very lovely. There's not too much within walking distance of our hotel in Belize City. Belize City itself, downtown, there are some issues in terms of there can be some issues around crime. So we stay at a hotel that's a little further out of town. We don't encourage people to go on their own in town, although they can go in groups. But sort of at that point, the tubing activity is a great way to spend that first morning, and I think really gets you in the mood and is super fun. So I would definitely recommend, if you sign up for the trip, to consider signing up for that as well.
Well, thanks so much, everyone, for joining us today. If you have any questions after our webinar, feel free to reach out, and we would love to have all of you on a Belize trip next year if you haven't yet signed up. And thanks again for joining us and spending a portion of your day with us.